Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I'm Michael Gracia, and I have a great show planned for tonight. But before we get to my guest, um, I have I just want to first off remind you that today is Wiz Wednesday. If you check out where is it at the Wiz Comic on Instagram and Facebook, you can see today's new strip that's up. And as a reminder, currently on Instagram, not Instagram, on Amazon, you can pick up my collection of last year's strips, the Whimsical Wiz, the complete 2023 collection with some bonus features. I will also be having the show this book this weekend at the show I'm doing on Saturday from 12 to 6 at Third Universe in Croton on the Hudson, New York, or Croton on Hudson. I'm sorry, I always say that, but it's Croton on Hudson, New York, at Third Universe Comic Shop. This will be available along with other stuff of mine. Now, speaking of that shop, of the show, I have tonight's guest. He's one of the people putting on the show. He is an amazing artist, and we're going to check out his work. We're going to learn all about his work. We're going to learn about the Croton Comic-Con. It's going to be such a great time. Let's bring on Jason Spyda Adams. Hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today. Just had some good Mexican food after paying for someone else's.
Yeah, that's always good. Oh man, I haven't had Mexican in a while. I gotta order that soon myself. One of the few foods I actually do order because I don't normally cook it.
One of the nice things about Croton on Hudson is we got good restaurants here. My wife is from further upstate, and we go to I've gone to restaurants up there, and it's just awful. But in Croton, we got some wonderful places. We got a smokehouse here you got to try while you're here. Maybe after the show. It's called 140 Grand. They do an award-winning brisket chili that'll knock your socks off. But everything they do there is great.
That's amazing. I actually spent a lot of time in Croton back in the 90s. I grew up in Mahopac, New York. And I went to Westchester Community College originally for the first couple of years of school. I was supposed to go to SVA, but due to medical issues, I kind of had to be near a hospital. I
didn't miss anything.
But what happened was I had a lot of friends from that area, and we spent a lot of time in the 90s at the Black Cow. And amazing coffee, and you'd go there, and at night I had friends that would play music there. That was the big thing in the 90s, going to a coffee house and they have their guitar or whatever and just out. But yeah, I used to hang out at the Black Cow quite a bit, and there were a few places I'd go and eat, and I heard they're still around, so I might drive up early to get a coffee from the Black Cow before stopping by.
Yeah, there will be time.
Yeah,
the show starts at noon, so you got all morning.
Yeah. I'm gonna get up a little earlier than because where I am, it's about a 30 to 40 minute drive, and it's I just want to make sure I get up there before traffic starts on Saturday. But yeah, so for people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your art background, and everything?
Well, I guess the thing that stands out is my dad is Neal Adams. So I grew up in comics. I invented, when I was a teenager, I invented characters called Armor and Silver Streak, who became characters in the Continuity Comics line that my father did. After that, I started college, and while I was in college, I wanted to do anything but comics. Not because I didn't love comics, but because I kept meeting broke comic artists. People talk about my dad, but he really didn't make money doing comics. He made money doing commercial art. And so I grew up in a studio where we were doing commercial art all the time. So it would be drawing storyboards of a woman holding up a bottle of detergent and talking to the camera. And it was dreadful. It was horrible for me. My dad just loved drawing, but I was like, well, we're not drawing superheroes. Why aren't we drawing cool stuff? Why are we drawing commercials, but that paid? And so he was able to keep his studio alive that way. Rent in the city, you pay about $20,000 a month for an art studio, and you got to make that back every month before you start paying everybody. So the commercial arts would pay it off. So I came from part of that world, the comic world. And when I was in college, I was just trying to find something to do. And I liked sculpting. I was doing stop motion animation. I like doing clay animation, like back in the day, the California Raisins. But I wanted to be Ray Harryhausen more than anything in the world. That and Bruce Lee. And so I was doing a lot of martial arts and sculpting and making these little movies with a Super 8 camera. And in college, I was just kind of lost. They screwed up my schedule every single semester. I was getting classes I didn't want. I never got the classes that I really wanted. I was turned away when I asked if they could squeeze me in. I even tried to use my father's name. I was like, my dad's Neal Adams, and like, ooh. And so I didn't find the school very helpful. I found the place helpful because there were rooms I could do art in and teach myself things, and there were models I could draw from and stuff. And I started doing a class. It was sort of a media arts thing where you used different materials and you sculpted things, you made 3D things. And while working on a show, we were doing a show for the Whitney Museum, where we were doing these giant skeleton pieces. It was a Halloween show. There was a girl who was crying at one of the tables, and I was like, guys, I'm going over to talk to her. I need to stop this girl from crying. And I sat down and I was like, are you okay? And she showed me a sculpture of Lamb Chop. Okay. And what it was a light switch. You push Lamb Chop's head up. And she had gotten this from a place called Happiness Express. It was a job. They hired her. And she wasn't doing a good enough job. And she was trying and she was trying. And I asked her to look at her tools. And she had these big wooden sculpting tools that you normally see. Yeah. I was like, well, that's what your problem is. Your problem is you need dental tools. I use sculpted dental tools to do little tiny details. Mm-hmm. And as it happened, my girlfriend was a dental hygienist student. And she worked for a dentist who every semester would end up with a bucket full of tools. She'd sterilize them, give them to me. And I had them in my locker. So I was like, all right, wait right here. Ran in my locker. I grabbed a set of tools for her. I was like, you can keep these. And I showed her to use them to get fine details. And she stopped crying. And in return, she gave me a business card for the place she worked at. And I went over there immediately, showed them my work. And I started doing, while I was still in college, I was doing Sonic the Hedgehog, different products. So there'd be toothbrushes, they would be night lights and light switches and just anything. And then there were biker mice from Mars. Mm-hmm. And so I started making a whole bunch of money because I was really good from doing stop motion animation figures. And I brought my buddy Digger into it with me. He wanted to sculpt too, but he didn't know where he was going. And we both started working in the toy industry. I started doing creepy crawlers for a company, that Toymax, that took over creepy crawlers. And it was doing great. So my background sort of came from there. I had gone to the shows to see like Chiller Theater and the model shows where people are doing their own molds and casts of their own model kits. And usually people start from there and they start toys after that. I sort of went in reverse, where at some point I was just frustrated working on things for other people and I wanted to do some of my own ideas. And so I started doing my own model kits, and I learned a little bit about manufacturing, and I was able to do a painted statue manufactured called Tournament. And I thought I was just doing great, and things were going really well. And then Todd McFarlane's had been doing his Spawn figures, and one day he just released everyone into the world. I think he wasn't very fun to work with, if I pick up right from everyone. Suddenly there were all these sculptors that were really good, and they didn't know what they were doing because they were paid so poorly by Todd that they went in and were charging half the price that I was charging. Wow. And I was like, I can't pay my mortgage on this. I need to afford to do stuff. And so I started working less and less in toys, just because, God, I did, for Toy Biz, I did the Neal Adams Batman black and white. Really nice piece. It took me forever. It's one of the only pieces ever done based on my father's work that he had a say-so on it. The way he likes to work is, you do a sculpture, you take photographs of it, he puts tracing paper over the photographs, and he traces the corrections on, and that can be endless. He wanted these things to look like his. It was the first piece ever done from DC that looked like his work, and I was doing it, and it took 2 months to do, and I was only paid $1,700 to do it. So I had to work on other things as well in order to afford to work for DC. So then I started also working with my dad again. I was in charge of original art and sales and the website and stuff, and sort of got sucked into that a lot. And then I'd break off and I'd do toys again, and I'd work for my dad again. And our relationship sort of changed in a business-wise, where we sort of, Dad and I really were getting along really well. It wasn't just like having a job somewhere. It was more part of the office and had a say-so in what was going on. And it sort of continued like that for a while. That's my general background. I'm still now pushing my own work. I'd like to do my own stories. I'd like to finish the Armor and Silver Streak story. I don't know if you ever read it, but the origin story, we never did the last issue back in the 90s. They got involved in other things. Then there was a lot of trouble in the comics industry, and all the independence went down. And so my father put our comic company on hold, and I never got to finish the tale of how Armor defeats Rage and gets back to Earth. And I'd like to get back to that at some point.
That'd be really cool. I'll be honest, I've read some of the comics. I can't remember which ones I've read and which ones I haven't. I have a box of indie books that have to go through and see what I have. But I've read every issue I own of whatever I got. So and I know of the characters you're talking about. I'm sure I own at least a couple of issues. In the meantime, though, let me just bring on a friend of the show, and is an artist who's going to be at the Croton Comic-Con. His name is Ray Felix, and let's just bring him on. Hello, Ray.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
All right.
I was listening to your story. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But then, you think about like AI, and then artists that are struggling, and then it's like, it really becomes a hard. You're like stuck between a rock and a hard place, between people who are cutting your prices, and then you got this AI stuff where you can do toys.
The AI is hurting everyone now. It started hurting the three-dimensional artists. Then it's hurting the comic artists and the illustrators, people who paint. And then it's now doubling back on the sculptors again, because somehow they're scanning in everybody's work. I could do a piece out of clay, never do it on computer. Someone can get a hold of it, scan it in, and then just use it for those AI programs. It's a shame.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you, kind of on that topic, are you still sculpting with clay? Have you moved into the 3D world? Or
I attempted it. When I first moved here 3 years ago, SVA was doing a class over the computer during COVID. And it was just painful. It was just painful. I think art is something you do with your hands. Maybe it's just because I'm old school. I have plenty of friends who sculpt on computer. My little brother draws on computer. I can't stand computers. I'm a blacksmith, basically. I'm going to join a Renaissance fair one day.
No, I get it. I use the computer out of necessity, but if I could, I'd rather do everything all traditional. That's just it. And I actually used to sculpt. I used to build puppets, and I would do like marionettes and rod puppets and things. So I used to sculpt that, out of clay and make the molds and do the whole thing. That you have your background in probably a lot better than I have my background in, because the heads I was making were literally like, the size of my head, because you have to be able to build mechanics into them and whatnot. But yeah, it was so much fun. It was a lot of, things I miss, in my art career is sometimes sculpting. It's something I ended up, used to sometimes build stuff out of cardboard just for fun. Like just some kind of prop. In my closet back there, I got like a Warhammer that I was making for my nephew, and like a giant sword and stuff. Yeah, I just got to finish paper macheing it and then painting it. But yeah, I used to.
You went to SVA. I also did sculpture in SVA, and in high school I did aluminum. We used to like melt aluminum and do like sand cast and stuff like that. The funny thing is, my brother one day he thought he was getting a discount. He says, "Oh, I got all these bars for discount. It's cheaper than aluminum." And then he goes to the smelt when SVA had a smelt on the photo building basement, and then he starts melting it, and all this gas starts coming out. And the teacher's like, "What did you melt in there?" He says, "Oh, it's lead." It was like this lead gas. They pulled the fire alarms and vacated every floor of the building. It was like lead gas. And I was like, "Oh, that's poison."
Great.
I still have the sculpture that he made from it too. It's out of the garage.
That's funny. That's really funny, actually. So you've been working professionally how many years now, would you say?
God, I'm 55 now. I started working when I was, I started working in my father's company when I was 9, but I started working in college when I was 19. So whatever the math is between 55 and 19.
No, I'm just curious. So, and the majority of your career has been sculpture, correct?
Yeah.
I find that amazing, because you don't get to see that a lot these days. Somebody getting to work with their hands and having the ability to to create pieces. Especially you got to work. I mean, I know you said the price, but you got to work on a piece that your father basically created, and then you got to take it into another format. I know you talked a little bit about the process, but I'm just curious, how was that for you, like bringing a piece of your father's art to life in a 3D form that you could actually touch?
It was really important. Before that, I did a piece called Going Ape. I started as a resin model kit, and it's a Tarzan piece based on his paintings. And I showed it to a guy who had a company that did statues, and he's like, "I'd like to do that as a statue." I was like, "I'd like you to do this. Let's do it. Set it up." And that was the actual first Neal Adams statue ever made. I kept sending my portfolio over to DC and hearing nothing back. They had plenty of guys working there. And I was at a show one day, and one of the guys who worked for DC Direct was giving a speech, and he said something about, what you have to do is show people what they're doing. You can't come in with a sculpture of Conan and say, "I want to do Batman." And I had avoided doing Batman sculptures because I wasn't able to sell them without getting in trouble, which nobody gets in trouble. I was just fearful that somehow I thought I was the only one that had to follow the rules. And so finally I did a Batman statue. I brought it to a convention, and I did get in trouble. The lawyer came over and was like, "You're not allowed to sell these." And I was like, "Well, I'm only making a couple, and it's not mass produced." And they sent another lawyer over, and I had to take it down. But we got over to the guys at DC Direct, and as it turned out, most of them were Alex Ross fans at the time. Yeah, that's the Going Ape piece. I'll have those at the show tomorrow. But when I went there, they weren't big Neal Adams fans. One of the guys sort of was, and he was the guy in charge. Mm-hmm. And there was another guy who's kind of polite to me, but disinterested. And while I was showing my work, the third guy comes in, and he looks at me like I just peed on the desk or something. And I had some samples there in a box. He picked them up, and he threw them back down. He picked another one up and threw it back down. And it was just like, pfft. And I was like, wow, this is a friendly place. But I got work there, and they said, well, what would you like to do? I was like, well, I was actually just talking to my dad. He's like, how come you're doing all this Alex Ross stuff and all these other comic artists? How come you don't have a Neal Adams? And the guy said, your dad would like to do one? I was like, yeah, I'd like to do one. Well, you got everyone else here. Why don't you have him? He's like, well, would you like to sculpt one? I was like, yeah, I'd really love to do that. And so at first they wanted they were doing just standing figures for the black and white series. Mm-hmm. And they're easy to produce. They're easy to mold and whatever. And I showed the designs to my dad. And he's like, this doesn't represent my art. I would like to do the running pose. Yeah, that one right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to click on it.
Pose from a Batman Joker book.
I don't think I can click on it. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Do I have one? Oof. Yeah, I think because I ran out of them, I took the link down.
Okay, it's not a problem.
Anyway, it's one of the most famous Batman poses of all time.
Yeah, the running one.
And I showed it to DC directly. I was like, that's too complicated. We can't do that. How are we going to get him to stand on one foot? Leaned over like that. I was like, it's sort of ceramic-y. It's not going to be a problem. And my father insisted to them if they do it. And so I had that pull with my father. I didn't have to go in there and say, I want to do this. And so they finally let me do it. And after that, after we did this piece, they started doing action poses based on other people's work instead of just standing figures. So we sort of changed what they were doing. I then did a man-bat piece for them. And then I was sort of cut off when they lost George Brewer's the guy that hired me. And the business changed, and I was off the list of artists. And one of the guys in charge was the guy that was throwing my work around. I was there. And I remember saying to my sister, Chris, I was like, I'm doing something wrong. And she said, you're not kissing the right asses. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's not me, Chris. You know me. I can't do this. She's like, then you're not going to get the work. And so at the next convention, I went to Atlanta or something. I bumped into him, and I was like, I sort of thought I'd be doing more work for you. He's like, well, why don't we hang out at the bar afterwards and we'll talk and maybe I'll get you back on the list. I was like, all right. So
did he try to Epstein Island you or
no,
proposition you or something? What
happened was
this
guy had a big bug up his ass about my dad, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I sat there with my wife was on my left side. He was on my right side. Guy's a raging alcoholic. And he kept ordering drinks. And I'm allergic to beer. I was drinking rum and Cokes. But I know that after 2, I'm not going to feel good the next day. So what I had to do was while he was buying me drinks, I'd pass it to my wife. She would have the waiter, the bartender dump it out and just give me a Coke. So I could fake this guy out for 2 hours while he talked shit about my dad. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse here.
You can. That's fine. I'll just change this from kid-friendly to adult.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
He just had so many bad things to say about my dad, and I just had to sit there going, oh, yeah, I know some people have that opinion. And I just wanted to throw the guy against the wall. But I wanted the work, and I was trying to balance out in my head. They really don't pay well, but everyone wants to work for DC Direct. Mm-hmm. So I took it for an entire evening, went back feeling bad about myself, and the guy still never called me. He was like, yeah, I'm going to get you back. You know what? And he just seemed to feel so powerful to be hiring these artists. And I guess a lot of the sculptors really were trying very hard to get work. Mm-hmm. Again, there were so many sculptors by then after people left McFarlane that they had their pick of pretty much anybody, and everyone wanted to work for them. And I guess they wanted to kiss ass a lot more than me in some cases, but some of them are just so damn talented, you know. So I'm not putting anyone down. There's guys who really did incredible work, and then things moved over to computers. But in working on something for my dad, how did that come about? It sort of came about by pushing my way in there, and then asking if we could do Neal Adams stuff. They've done Neal Adams stuff after that, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like his work. Like I explained to you, my father liked to take tracing paper and put it over photographs of what the sculptor's working on, and fix it in this and say, here, make it look like this. The sculptures to follow, either they never gave my father the opportunity, even though it was under contract, or they ignored it. My father would do these drawings and the sculpture would never change. And so you got some pieces out there. It's wonderfully sculpted. It's Superman breaking the chains over his chest. It's wonderfully sculpted, but it doesn't look anything like a Neal Adams drawing. And my father had sent a series of drawings over so the guy could fix it. They never fixed it.
I think that's ego. That's the sculptor's ego getting in the way.
Well, no, if DC had told the sculptor to make it look that way, they would have done it. I think that once we lost George Brewer over there, they weren't pushing for
quality.
For quality, or they just weren't into my father's ego, I suppose. What they would call his ego. I would say, no, it really should look like the others.
My father had an ego, but he earned it.
Yeah, well, it's not even ego. He really had a passion. He loved the idea of statues being done.
Mm-hmm.
And
I met your father several times. He was a fun guy.
Thanks. He just wanted something to represent his art. If you're going to do it, then do it. And he's willing to do these free drawings for them.
Right.
You know, how many people get his attention to help them with their work. Mm-hmm. And it's not the sculptor's fault. I think that they just didn't pass it along. They weren't Neal Adams fans. They were Alex Ross fans,
right?
And other artists. And we just, unfortunately, some really great sculptures did some really great work. It just didn't look right, and that's to me is sad, because it could have been something else.
The same thing with Kirby too. It's like when certain people were doing things about Kirby, they didn't look Kirby-ish. They were doing their own version of it. So
sure. It's an artist representation of the other artist's representation.
Right. But they think it's old-fashioned or something. But it's like, well, you have to just tell them, idiot, this is popular because of this artist.
Yeah.
You know? People love Neal Adams. You know, they don't want the Neal Adams. They don't want the Elvis impersonator. They want it to look like Neal Adams drew it.
Right. He did certain things in the industry. It's sort of like when they said, no, we just want to do a standing Batman. And my dad was like, my Batman doesn't stand. He punches people. He runs and he jumps and he swings on a bat rope and he flies in the air on his cape. He does stuff. How can you just do a standing, Neal Adams Batman?
Maybe you should approach Prime One, because they do very dynamic statues, and they're pretty. Have you ever talked to them, the sideshow people?
I've dropped my stuff off at the sideshow guys many times. I think they're pretty much using computer sculptors now. But even before that, I must have dropped off 7 portfolios and didn't make the cut. Maybe it's me, maybe it's them. I don't know. I don't have. I'm not too big of an ego guy. I think my work is good. I don't feel the need to say I'm better than anyone else, or I fit every category.
Right.
Sideshow stuff is just gorgeous, and I would have liked to have been part of that at some point. But now I think it's all computer, and it really would take a good 2 years of studying every day for me to get good at computer. That's from what I hear from people.
It will. I used to do 3D art back in the early 2000s. I didn't like it. I did it because I needed to learn it for the jobs I was doing back then.
Right.
It's just like I said, if I could draw traditionally for the rest of my life, I would. But the computer makes things easier, makes things clean up easier. The undo button is fantastic for fixing inking mistakes. So So it's a tool that just makes so much. The strip I do, I don't have one original strip because it's all digital, and it's like every day I turn my head, and every time I turn my head in that direction, I'm looking at my drawing table and how little I use it, and it becomes just a collecting, table of books and papers and pens, and I'm like, I have a little clipboard I sketch on every now and then. It's, I don't know, it's sad.
The sculpting programs, though, there's so many tools. And I remember doing the class, and there was like a screen like this, and there were maybe 10 people in the class. And you'd watch everyone. The teacher's trying to show you, and he's clicking these buttons, and he's saying things like Command F3 or something like that. And you don't know what Command F3 means. He's just running through it. And you just watch other people, everyone's microphone's off, and someone would just be sitting there like, oh. And then walk out of the room because they're just so frustrated from not understanding what the teacher is teaching them. It's very complicated, and I do believe it take a long time to do, and I have bills to pay.
Yeah, exactly. I get it.
But I haven't had the time to invest in it. Some people, maybe they took to, I don't know. One of my favorite sculptors is Tony Cipriano. He does a lot of Frazetta stuff. He's sculpting on computer now. But what I'm also seeing is people are sculpting on computer and then selling the files.
Yeah.
And somehow they're making a profit on this, but they're selling the files for like $1.50 or something like that.
What?
Yeah. Well, what happens is a lot of people buy those type of files and then 3D print them.
Yeah.
So you're just sending out people are just buying tons and tons of stuff,
and then you can print it out any size you want. You can just, and to me it's nuts, and I can't figure out how they're making money. But I'm seeing a lot of the guys go at each other's throats lately, and it's because they want to still do this. And there's so many guys on. There's more guys now doing it on computer than they were doing it with hands back when the McFarlane guys were challenging me. So I think there's another struggle for work. I think that a lot of people are working off of buck models, and you could just throw a costume and turn a naked thing into Thor and repose it. And then you're done. You're done in 3 hours, I think.
I mean, you see that in the McFarlane toys, the same body with a different head, different character. It's like, this is kind of shitty.
Cleaning up, McFarlane certainly knows how to make money.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think he recently did where he draw me a cover and I won't pay you for it, but you get the honor of I'll print it or something.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was a smart tactic.
Yeah. I can't imagine being that way. I'm a Spawn fan, and I've talked to a lot of the people that worked for him, and some of them are just so unhappy. Like, they have to cut themselves off from like screaming.
I will say this because I don't know Todd. I've never met him, but and I'll be honest, Spawn I'm not the biggest fan of. It wasn't a book that hooked me, but I recently showed my wife a couple of episodes of the HBO series, and I'm like, this was so much better. Even though it was basically the comic, it was so much better animated than in comic form for me. And but what I will say is nobody gets to the level that Todd gets by being a nice guy all the time.
I guess not.
That it just goes like, I'm not going to say he's a bad guy or he's a really good guy. I don't know. I have no clue. But I think anyone who makes it to that level in business can't always be Mr. Nice Guy. That's it. That's it. I've seen it. I've been the boss at places, and I've been a teacher in a classroom. I can't always be nice to every single student. If you're acting a certain way,
sure, or
you're providing, not doing what you're supposed to, I have to become a jerk.
Yeah.
I think it kind of goes the same way with bosses.
But I remember when I did my first. My big love for McFarlane is the way he changed the action figures. Now I still love my old Star Wars toys. The original little Star Wars toys I think are the best Star Wars toys. When they redid them and they posed them, They didn't seem action figure enough anymore. I didn't like them. But when the Spawn figures came out, I was like, oh, they'll let me sculpt really good. I could do anatomy. I don't have to do like these fake anatomy simplified things. And so I got my first action figure. It was for Mission Impossible. And I was really happy about it. And I was doing, and they gave me these drawings and it looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Was it Tom Cruise version or the original series?
Tom Cruise.
Okay.
So I said to them, this body looks like an action figure. Can we do it to look like Tom Cruise? And they're like, no, it's an action figure. I was like, yeah, but I don't know if you've seen these new Spawn figures that came out, but they look like real anatomy. They're not just these bulky, like Ninja Turtle-y things. And they're like, no, we want them to have all these muscles. It's an action figure. It's an action figure. And I was like, damn, all right, fine. And then at least I had the head. I did this really good Tom Cruise head.
Yeah.
And then about time I'm ready to finish and send it in, they give me a call. They're like, you got to make the head generic. And I was like, why? Why did I make the head generic?
You don't want to pay him a royalty.
Something like that. Tom Cruise won't let you use the likeness. I was like, oh, but it's really a good one, guy. It's really good. They're like, no, generic it up, making it look like an average guy, whatever. So what I ended up is a body that doesn't look like Tom Cruise and a head that doesn't look like Tom Cruise.
It
doesn't represent the nice thing about it is it came with these little rubber masks you could put on because Tom Cruise pulls his face off in this thing. And I was really unhappy about it, and it didn't make it into the regular stores. And then I bought a copy of Figure Modeler magazine.
Did it get it?
I always went through things looking for my work. Finally, I was like, oh, there's something I did. And I learned the title. It's like, Worst Figure of the Year. It's impossible.
I was to the editors telling you to do it the other way.
And I couldn't like write to them and say, please like add in there that here's a picture of the head I did. And it was like the worst figure of the year. Thank you very much.
Wow. I'm looking them up now. That's hilarious. Here they don't. He looks like he's frightened. And his mask looks like Bluto or something like that. Right. He's got one that looks like Bill Clinton, and the other one's Bluto.
It was so disappointing because it was my very first figure. And actually, the next time I did a figure was just a bendy. It was recently I did a Red Sonja.
Oh, cool.
But
Ben Stiller as Mission Impossible.
But I ended up, I was checking out pricing, and again, people were bringing the prices down so far on action figures. And these guys, again, were good because they were McFarlane artists, and they were so used to putting in all those details, and they often worked as a team. One guy would start, another guy would work on it and whatever. But they were charging crap money, just like, wow, how can you possibly, start a family, keep working in this industry? So I just remember talking to people that they would stop at my booth and look at my work and be like, wow, how do I do this? I was like, well, you work backwards because I'm not doing those action figures. I'm not competing with these great artists for really bad prices right now. I really would love to do action figures, but there's a lot of extra steps you have to. Back then, you had to work in wax. You can sculpt in wax, make a mold, sculpt in clay, make a mold, cast in wax, and touch up the wax. There's a lot of steps to it. Mm-hmm. Then you recast it and send those parts as prototypes to be manufactured. And it was a lot of work. And then I looked at what people were being paid, and I was like, I made more during doing bugs for Creepy Crawler. I could sit up for a night and make $1,500 sculpting a tray of bugs, making a quick bug the next day and sending it in. And then Batman took me 2 months to do, and it's just a figure, not even an action figure with joints. That paid me $1,700. I'd rather sculpt a whole bunch of bugs there for
Why
a
do you
decent.
think that is? That these big companies like DC are always like just paying the bare minimum. What do you think is behind that? Their
Once you get the competition, I mean, it's like anything else. Comic artists are not paid what they're worth.
No, definitely not.
No, not at all.
It's very hard to support a family on comics. That's why my father didn't support my family on comics. He did it on commercial art. He loved doing it, and later in life he was able to say, it's not worth it to me to do. I'll do a cover for you, but I'm going to charge you this. And it was worth it for them because everyone would buy it.
Right.
But I can't tell you how many people came to my father's office really strapped and needed work. And we had commercial work, and some people would turn them down. Like, I'm not doing that. I do comics. And he's like, yeah, but if you draw some women in the kitchen holding up a bottle of Dawn,
Right.
guess what? You can pay your mortgage this week.
Right. I knew one of your dad's employed. I knew a few of your dad's employees, but one of them, which was funny, was Melvin Yalagan. He's no longer with us. Yeah. And I remember he got a job at Joe Kubert's school, and he kept telling the kids, "You're not going to make a career in comics. You're going to." He says, "I work for Neal Adams, and commercial art is the way to go."
Yeah,
he kept saying that, and then the students reported him, and he got fired.
Oh, shit. Is that why he got fired?
It's like
horrible.
You think they would have been like, maybe he's on to something, give him a commercial art class and do commercial. No, they were like comics. Yeah, it's like,
but don't they do commercial art now at the school?
I don't know, because they used to do animation, and I was just looking at their website, and I didn't see any animation courses being offered either.
I don't know. I heard somebody told me. I think they do a commercial art class.
Who knows?
Yeah, hindsight, with all that stuff.
Most of the commercial art, unfortunately, is outside the country now. We were doing lots and lots of commercial art, and then one day, everyone that brought us work got fired within the same week, and was looking for work. One of our clients that repped, our reps would go to get the work, ended up being our secretary for a while. Everyone got fired. There was suddenly no work in commercial art, and so my father went back to comics, which was fun because I was working then and I got to do stuff with them. But only a Neal Adams can command that kind of price, and he had special deals. I forget what they're called, but there's something you can get if you're a big wig artist, where there's a name for it, but if you're going to pay such and so this much, I get $1 more than that. Where he tops out over anybody else. When he does something for them, they have to give him the highest rate by $1 or something like that. And he's going to work for them. He also had it in DC's contract that he got a certain amount of books that he did, which we could sell on our website. So we get 200 copies of the latest cover that came out, so that he can sign them. We sell them for $100 a piece, and then he makes that much more money to support the studio.
Right.
So it was an ongoing business that he had to restructure as the world changed constantly. The commercial art disappearing, that being the moneymaker, and comics paying what they pay, was not easy to transition, but he managed to do it. And he's also always telling people to learn about investing money, stocks. He always told people, did something where he said he put 10 quarters on the table. How does the story go? He would tell you to look at the quarters and then close your eyes, and he'd take a quarter away. He's like, how many quarters are there? And the person would have to count. And he'd say, the reason you have to count is because it's still about the same amount of money. Now, if you take 10% of every dollar you make and you invest that in stocks, you're going to find yourself with some real money because it's going to grow. So he would constantly try and get people to invest in the stock market. Apple and the obvious ones. They don't teach you this in school.
Yeah, no, they don't. Yeah,
rich people are making money off of doing these things. They're teaching in business school, but artists are not learning this. Artists are doing the dumbest thing we could possibly do, and I did it for years. I take my money, I invest it in my next sculpture, paying the mold guy to make my molds and casts for me and whatever. And I'm constantly investing in myself. But if Spyda Creations has a slow period, then suddenly I'm looking for anything I can do for work so I can keep my mortgage paid, so I can pay all my bills. But if you invest in something else, that's constantly growing. Right now, that money came in really handy. The past 2 times I had to pay taxes because things in our office changed financially, and I had to pay all these taxes. And I learned that I owed $40,000, but I made $50,000 in the stock market.
Which stock was this? I'm buying it now.
It's all the big ones. It's Amazon. It's Apple.
Right.
Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what else, but it's.
I'm sure it wasn't Boeing.
Don't take any chances.
They actually went up and down though during the COVID. They did make it, even with the plane crashes. They drop and then go back up.
But after I took that money out, took the $40,000 out of it, I still had an amount like $110,000 in there. And by the time the next tax season came, I had made another $50,000 just letting it sit there. Or maybe it was 40. It went back up to 150. So then I was able to not dig out of my bank account, just sell the stocks and pay it. And it was something that no one would ever teach me in art school. And all these artists that I meet, no one does this. So my father learned it in his 50s and made a lot of money in the stock market just by buying it, letting it sit there instead of a bank account, keeping the business going. But artists, we want to be artists. We just want to do our stuff. We want to go into our cave. We want to turn our headlamps on. We want to do our drawings, do our sculpting, whatever, even on computer. And we want to come out and we want to eat our meals and have some time with our families and go back to work.
Yeah.
But there's all this other stuff that no one's ever taught us that other people know how to do. The artist's life is very secluded in a lot of ways. So we're missing out on a lot of stuff.
True. Life is passing us by. We're making comics.
Right. Well, we don't have much security. I mean, that's why a lot of the guys, when they get old, suddenly they don't have a way to support themselves. We saw this with Dave Cockrum when he got sick. And fortunately, all the artists got together and helped him out and bought him and his wife a house, and they were taken care of. But you hear more and more about someone in the comic industry suddenly aging out, either not able to work or just not getting work with the big names who don't honor them as artists, and try and support them. They just bring on the next new guy for less money in a lot of cases. And then you're seeing artists in trouble, writers in trouble, creators in trouble, creators never getting credit for their work.
I think it's because of the United States, we don't really respect our elderly or honor our elderly. I mean, we have a lot of ageism in the country, and then that I think that's a reflection of corporatism, you know?
That is the corporate world, yes, but you'll notice when you go to conventions, the fans will treat the older guys like royalty.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they will. But yeah, the corporations don't though. That's why they can't get any work, you know?
I remember my last San Diego con, they had cut the artist alley tables down to half tables. So you get one chair, and
you're squeezed in like a vice.
Right. But I saw the guy who created Robin and Robinson.
Jerry Springer. Jerry Robinson.
Hopefully not Jerry Springer. He wasn't there that day.
Yeah, Jerry Robinson.
I saw Jerry Robinson.
Jerry Lewis.
I saw Jerry Robinson there with his wife, and they had one chair they were switching off. And I was like, holy mother of God.
This guy should
not know who that is. Whoever the guy's playing Thor is, he's got anything he wants in an entourage, and someone's rushing water over to him. You got the Jerry Robinson over there splitting a chair with his wife.
It's fucking horrible.
And I never did a San Diego con after that. Maybe if I start publishing, I'll get a publishing table. but I was shocked at the Artist Alley and the way they were treated. But fans were coming over and worshiping them and giving them due credit, and it was hurtful to see what I saw. But the fans are respecting their elders, and the people in the business that made this business. But yeah, and corporate stuff, when Marvel and DC went all suits, that changed a few things. And I think your question just had to do why. It's business. It's business to, if you're getting flooded with artists, go bring the price down. Larry's doing it for this price. We can offer you this. And suddenly you're doing it for Larry's price.
Right. Your dad did do fine art too, with doing the Art Basel shows a few times, right? So he did delve into that fine art realm, doing the canvases and things like that, the Green Lanterns.
We were dabbling. We did a gallery show that I wasn't very happy with. But obviously, pop art, some artist that can't come up with their own stuff takes a panel out of a book, blows it up, traces it and paints it, and makes $1 million on it. And the guy who drew the pages going, what? Is this logic work? And so my dad started doing large paintings, and the fine art world didn't want to have anything to do with them. Wow. Fans did. So we still had the fan art. We still were hoping on it catching on. And my younger sister, Zia, you'll meet her at the show tomorrow. She's done 3 wonderful blow-ups of my father's Ben Casey panels from his Sundays. She's continuing that. And in Croton, there's a gallery here. And I talked to them, and they're going to have a gallery show of her stuff while the convention's going on. So she's going to be sort of doing the fine art thing that Dad didn't get to continue. And see how far we could go with it, because clearly, if the actual artist is doing the giant painting, it should be more valuable. But I find that the fine art world is really about who you know, which parties you're going to. Some things I can't say.
Yeah, exactly. My students I teach, and my students are like, why aren't you like a big painter? Because we're doing this massive painting, like literally like an entire roll of cotton duck canvas. And I was like, well, there's no such thing as free admission. That's all I can say. Yeah. There's a cost to being a famous artist.
One of the things you learn in art school is Andy Warhol never did his own work.
Right, exactly.
And assistants do it. And exactly. We learned this because my painting teacher was having students do his paintings for him.
Yeah. And Jeff Koons as well. He pays people $80,000 to do his work, and he makes millions.
Our teacher didn't pay anybody anything. That was internship. They go off interns is a curse word, man. But he would tell you about Andy Warhol doing this too. That made it okay for him to do it. And so students would sign up and think they're going to learn something, but really you're just working for this guy. And he's part of the right crowd and doing the right parties and smoking the right dope and whatever. It's amazing. The fine art world, very disappointing, because I wanted to dabble in it myself, work on some big stuff and do some creative sculptures maybe. And every turn I made just was the same result. It really is being part of a right crowd.
Right. And, I have an off-camera proposal for you.
Off camera, he said.
Off camera proposal.
Do you work for you? Okay, want me to intern?
And it's something that you might be interested in.
Sure.
Let's actually we'll talk off camera. Let's kind of start talking, because I didn't even realize I'm having such a great time talking. We've almost hit an hour. We haven't even talked about Croton Comic-Con yet, which is happening this Saturday, May 4th. So it's not just Free Comic Book Day, but it's May the 4th. I'll be with you there, Star Wars Day. Great day for you guys to come on to a show at Croton on Hudson. at Third Universe. And
it's an interesting show.
Yeah.
I was called in. Sonia, who works at the comic shop, very nice girl, knows me because she babysits for us, and someone had brought up doing Comic-Con. She's like, well, I know a perfect person to get involved. And so I joined them in the first meeting, and they're throwing this thing together at first really quickly. And we had originally gotten a junior high school to do it in, and making all these plans. I'm also part of a sword club, and we're going to do a sword display and all sorts of different things. And then we found out that in Croton, at least, you're not allowed to make money on school property. And so that threw everything up in the air for a while. And we thought, what are we going to do? We planned on do it this way. We had all the space. We had a stage. We had this and that. And fortunately, Third Universe came and saved the day. They had bought the building next to theirs to do gaming in. And they can clear out that space and put tables in there for us to have artists and anyone in the comic industry there. And then they have these great tents that they could put outside. There's certain regulations we're all following of, you can't have a tent on a sidewalk that is less than 8 feet deep, because they want 4 feet for people to walk in and 4 feet for you to have a table or a tent. So there was a lot of back and forth, and it was shaky there for a while, and then it suddenly came together. And we sort of owe a lot of it to the guys at Third Universe, because they're more used to conventions than the town had people at the town who were originally putting this thing on, who are doing things with their clipboards and whatever, and doing a good job. It's just Comic-Cons are chaos in a lot of ways, and probably break a lot more rules than people realize. So what Third Universe was able to do was get us enough space to make this an interesting show. And what the town put together that makes it a great show is there's a bus service that travels through the town and makes stops, including the train station. So if people want to come in from Manhattan or anywhere, they get off at the train station. The bus comes around every half hour. It'll stop at places where you could go to these great restaurants. I was telling you, Michael, earlier about we got some really fabulous food down here. And we dropped off flyers to the restaurants, and they're going to have specials at the restaurants. So you can make a day of it. There's going to be live bands inside the convention. Bagpipes, I think. I'm wondering how that's going to go. They've got a lot of gaming events going on. And then the show ends at 6, but the bus will run till 10 o'clock. So if you want to grab dinner at one of these fabulous places, wait till the show ends, hop on the bus, go around town, and then get picked up again and brought to the train station or wherever your car is. It ended up being, it's a very interesting way to do a show. It's very different than any convention I've been to. And I think if it's a success, then what will eventually happen is on these bus stops, there's some of these places like Michael was talking about, this coffee shop in town. There's enough space in that place because they do art shows in there. We probably next year could get them to be part of the Comic-Con and put even more tables in there so that you want to go around town, like going to Disneyland, you know, and
like the studio,
yeah. So maybe the town can, and like I said, my sister's doing a show at the gallery of her paintings. Gallery is one of the stops there. So eventually we get the whole town interested in doing Comic-Con things. So it's like going to a place, you know, a town. This is going to be a lot smaller than all that. My thoughts on the thing, but it's a very interesting show. It sounds like a lot of fun. It doesn't have as many tables as, say, if we had gotten to junior high school, but it's it's turning into something that's very intriguing, as far as you're going to be pulling even people that aren't into comics are going to come see everything because it's part of the town event. So like the town has done music festivals and art fairs and stuff where art is around the street and everything, and they get big crowds. And for us, it's great because there's all these people are going to come in if everything goes right, and we'll get new people that weren't reading comics before, people that are just interested in getting into it, people who are into gaming and crisscrossing everything. And then on top of that, it's just the party of somehow there's a brass band and there's a comedian. They were working out films, but ended up they couldn't do that. But maybe next year. So it's sort of a wild, wacky show. Something I'm looking forward to experiencing. It could go any which direction, but I think fun is a good word for it. I think it's going to be enjoyable no matter what. I hear the weather's going to be good that day, so that's a plus since part of it's outside.
Right.
But it's turning into something, I think.
That's cool. So you're one of the managers on it?
No, I think I've taken on enough responsibility to say yeah, sort of. But no, I sort of go to the meetings, and I was really originally just a vendor, and I want to know what's going on and give my advice. I think some of them, one or two people think I'm a manager, but I'm really just part of a gathering while the town is. They handle all the legal stuff.
Right. So you're like the cheerleader also / vendor.
Or the Yoda or something. I'm just in there to say, all right, that's not. There was a woman was setting up that Artist Alley. She's a very nice person. I'm not making fun of her. It's just a funny situation. So she planned on putting Artist Alley in an alley, like between two buildings.
That's hilarious.
And it wasn't to sell stuff. She was just going to put art up and have people look at it. It's like you walk through an alley. That's what she thought it was. I was like, no, Artist Alley is where the artists sit and sell their stuff. They don't want to just show their stuff up. They're here to sell. This is so it was funny explaining certain things. The deputy mayor's part of the meetings, and he's a huge comic fan, so he helped out a lot with setting some things straight.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Before you start a sculpture, like what is your artistic process about? Like what is your approach to deciding like what you're going to sculpt? I mean, if it's commercial, we know it's commercial, but if you're doing something as an artist for art's sake,
like your tournament piece, that was all you.
Yeah,
how did you kind of come up with that?
I've got a shelf over to my left, and it's packed with sketchbooks.
Right.
I've commuted since I was a kid to work and to school and to things, and I was sort of brought up to always have your sketchbook on you and just draw in it. And so I've come up with stories in my head. A lot of them have stories written down in them, and then I just start doing compositions, and that would make a nice sculpture. They're sometimes influenced, the tournament's influenced by a Jeff Jones piece where girls riding off in the distance on a beast. And I thought that was just really cool. I really love the painting.
And that's the tournament piece you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring that up. I like that piece a lot.
And while you do that, I'm going to take a bite of Ho Fun.
So...
that's a great piece.
So tournament's a lot of fun because when I first did it, the first thing people do is say, is she going to fall over? And if you actually look at it, the dinosaur is really well balanced because the tail weighs as much as her on the front. So it looks as if she's about to go take off running on this dinosaur off this cliff, and which is the idea of the piece. It's got this hidden tension / motion about to happen, where the whole thing drives forward, but you can tap her on the hand really hard and it's not going to tip forward. It's just sort of a trick of the eye that the balance is there. So I thought it was a great composition in my sketchbook, and and I just immediately started sculpting it. And then I did a series of them. There's 4 to the series. Everything's got a lot of motion in it. Like you'll see a lot of sculptures, whether it's on computer or whether it is by hand at the shows, everyone's doing busts. And the reason they do busts is because you could do it on just one mold and sell it, and people like painting them and they make a killing on it. But I like shoot myself in the foot because I have like 12 pieces to each one. It takes a whole bunch of molding. They're complicated. There's a lot to paint in them, and so people tend to shy away. They just want to do busts. But I'm starting to do some more busts lately just to catch up and make some easy money. Well, I still want to do the compositions because that's what illustration of any sort is about to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've got a piece where 2 of the girls and the dinosaurs are fighting each other, and it's sort of they're spinning at the same time, and one of them is about to block with a shield, the other one's about to stab down. There's a lot of excitement to it, and it's probably one of my favorite pieces I've ever done. It's one of my worst sellers because it's like a $250 piece because of all the molding and casting, and it's complicated. Where a lot of people just want to do these things that look like chess pieces in a way. So I'll have that piece.
It's because it's cheap and fast, right? It's like they just trying to turn out.
Also easy to paint.
Yeah.
Here's. Hold on one sec.
I'm gonna give you the screen.
Here's my Daredevil.
Hold on, let me give you the screen. There we go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So he's fun. He's pretty easy to paint. You can get it done in a day.
Yeah.
Building some of the more complicated ones. I got another one called Demon Tower. It's Conan on top of a tower. The tower is falling apart while he's battling half a dozen demons.
Wow.
And you're baking these in an oven? You have like an actual oven to bake these?
I use polymer clay, so you could put in a regular oven.
Okay.
And then you mold it with rubber, and then you cast it in resin.
So you don't have like a giant kiln or anything like that?
No, I don't have anything like that now.
That's That's cool though.
I actually have a guy do my molding and casting for me because I'm allergic to some of the silicone stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because then that's an extra expense. But I like doing really complicated things, and they're a little harder to sell because they're a lot of work for the people buying them. Yeah. And then you got the whole crowd that's like, "Well, can you paint one for me?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, for another $500, I'll paint." Take me a week. I don't know.
So like you're basically selling them raw, and it's almost like people just go off to their own.
Yeah, the resin kit field is a lot of fun. Wonderfest is all resin kits. Jersey Fest is a show that I do, and there's Chiller Theater used to be great for. That's in Jersey, great for resin kits. It's becoming more T-shirts and posters, unfortunately, but. It's a field where you get to, as an artist, do your art, and there are collectors that want to paint them and build them. And some of these guys are just incredible at painting them. And then recently started doing cold cast bronze, where
nice.
Before you pour the resin in, you get bronze powder, and you sprinkle it into the mold, and then you pour your resin in. So the top coating of it is bronze, but resin in the middle. That one right there is solid bronze.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I saw bronze. I thought that was.
And you're using silicone molds for bronze? It wouldn't really.
Yeah, because you're not melting metal. You're taking bronze powder. You're sprinkling it in there. Then you're pouring your resin in there, and it backs up the thing. So this casting of this Tarzan piece.
Wow.
Hold on. Let me give you the screen so I can see that better.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Wow. Very nice.
This is a resin casting, but the whole surface of it is bronze powder.
Wow.
And then you put shoe polish on it, and then you polish it down, so you get the whole bronze effect.
So how many of those do you make?
I've only made 10 of these so far, because I've only done one show before this show. And I haven't gotten great at the internet yet. I'm trying to promote my stuff on the internet. So I sold a few on the internet, a few at the last Jersey Fest. Although people there were more interested in the model kit version.
Right.
So I sold some to on Facebook group. There's a Edgar Rice Burroughs group, sold some there. But I'm trying to work on my internet presence a little bit more. My stuff.
I see you got the megalith there. Wow, that was a cool book.
My brother Joel invented megalith.
Yeah, that's
ended
cool.
up being one of our best selling characters.
Yeah, I remember that book. I was in elementary school when the continuity comics came out.
Yep, I was just finishing high school and starting college. So there's my armor piece down there. The red head.
Oh, right here, yeah.
Armor's the character that I invented for continuity comics.
Is that right?
Yep.
Wow.
He actually changed a few times. At first, he had a bunch of armor on. But in junior high school, I started studying martial arts. And by the time I was in high school, I was really, really good at martial arts. And armor was sort of my vision of myself in a lot of ways. Yeah, and so when I started doing martial arts, I changed him into a martial arts character. And I loved martial arts weapons. And so I made his costume out of his martial arts weapons. By the time I was in college, while I was in college, I'd been studying Chinese American Goju. And I was studying animal forms. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if armor studied animal forms from other planets? And so I not only invented some animals for him to study from, but I developed martial arts forms for those animals. So he had, where you have your tiger style or whatever, he had the Bana High, and I was able to actually fight in these styles. I actually won a tournament. I won a tournament in my early 20s doing armor styles, and people were like, what the hell is he doing? But it was an actual martial arts form that it was really fun. The stories were fun. The characters a lot of fun.
Do you still do martial arts out of curiosity?
Oh yeah. Every Sunday, I just got my wife into it. We do a sword class.
Oh, nice.
We study samurai sword. Then we started doing more of a rapier style and a double-handed sword. And every month we do a combat class where you put gear on, you put a helmet on, you put padding on, and you get a sword that's a plastic rod with foam covering it, and you go hard at it. It's energetic and thrilling. You combat it like any other, kickboxing or anything. But it's such a joy. It's such a joy to do.
You mentioned animal forms. Are you a fan of the 5 Deadly Venoms by any chance? Was one of those movies that highlighted the animal form, animal forms. And
my teacher, his name is Bill Louie, the one that taught me Chinese American Goju. He was a film actor. You could look up his name and find films that he did. But he worked with Jackie Chan's teachers and other people, but mainly in Goju. And he was given the name Chinese American Goju when he started teaching, because Goju is a Japanese style. But he had studied that, and when he became a teacher, his teacher gave him the name Chinese American Goju. And American Goju went to Ron Van Cleef, who's a very famous black. They studied together. So they had to divide the names up. So Ron got American Goju and Bill Louie got Chinese American Goju. But that's where the basis of all my studies came from.
Very interesting.
Yeah, he was the Black Dragon, right? Yeah, I met him in person many years ago at a there's a show that Cinemax and HBO, well, actually it was Cinemax at the time. Now they're it was like a martial arts / comic book show. They still have it.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was, but it's in Manhattan. And they do it with movie theaters now. First it was like a hotel, then after that they did movie theaters. And he's always there. And a lot of old school martial arts. Even the Hammer goes there. And all those old actors from back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of my dad's closest friends, Dad did a bunch of movie posters, martial arts movie posters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dad used to do some great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Seraphim Karalexis was his buddy. And when I was a kid, Seraphim liked me a lot. He was sort of like a godfather to me for a while. And when I needed a teacher, he's the one that recommended Bill Louie to me. And my father sent me. And I excelled quickly. I had almost no life, so I was practicing 7 hours a day a lot of the time.
Wow.
I love the jump spinning and wild stuff. I was up in the air a lot.
It's not that you didn't have a life; that was your life. When you were studying, that was your discipline. That was.
But you know, it's funny because I studied martial arts for a while, up until basically I busted my knee, and when I was did I do it in junior high? I remember in junior high I was taking Taekwondo for a while, and I literally would go 6 days a week to classes. I would do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes where I would go because I was 13 years old or something. So I was able to go into the kids class and then stay later into the adult classes. So I'd practice in between. Tuesday and Thursday were private lessons, and Saturday was sparring classes. And when I wasn't in the martial arts school, I would practice at home. And I'd literally spend, if I wasn't drawing, I was doing martial arts as a kid.
Right.
And I studied a couple of different forms, but I ended up doing bad in school and had to quit. But but that was the last time I studied formally. And then it was friends of mine who took stuff, and we would just teach each other from the different styles that we've taken. And then when I was 21, I busted my knee, and that was the end of my martial arts studies.
Yeah, I did. I also did Taekwondo and then Seido karate for a long time. And then when my son was born, I think in my mid-30s, I stopped. It got expensive. Then I started coaching wrestling and track, and then just dead. Nothing. The older you get, you're like, this is expensive. Having kids.
My teacher would give everyone nicknames from the way that they fought.
Yeah.
And he knew that when I started, I wanted to do movies. So he was calling me Leaf Hopper instead of Grasshopper.
Right.
And then he switched it to, for like a week, it was Golden Boy, which I found very offensive. I don't know why he was calling me Golden Boy. And then it changed to Golden Eagle. But I still didn't really understand why it was my name. Because we had a short guy in class who was just fierce. And he gave him the name Pitbull. And other people had these names that fit him. Then one day we're fighting, we're sparring. And I was doing really, really well. And I'd gotten really, really good. And my thing was showing off. I like jump spinning hook kicks, jump spinning crescent kicks, and all the stuff. I loved spinning hooks and all that, just legs in the air. And one day we were like, okay, so now Jason's not allowed to use his legs to attack. You can only fight with your hands. See how your hand techniques are doing. And the other guy was only at attack with his legs. He couldn't use his hands for some reason. Then I got my ass kicked over and over again. He's like, you're what we call a leg fighter. Your name is Spyda. From now on, your name is Spyda. So that's where the name comes from.
I was wondering.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was curious.
He meant to say Spider. But he had a Queen's accent. And
Spyda.
And I preferred the way he said it. But because I was like, Spider sounds like a biker. I didn't know. But I understood why he gave me the name.
Right. So
at least it fit. But when I finally spelled it out, I made it Spyda, so you had to say the Queen's accent with it. So, the name stuck. The name stuck. I when I was 30, I crushed my my right tibia and broke my fibula as well. Yeah. And so things slowed down for me. I worked with a trainer and got the leg going. Was taking more weapons classes, doing a lot of fencing, swashbuckling, stage combat. I do I used to do acting. I did a lot of Shakespeare and stuff, and the swords came in handy. And so I continued with a lot of weapons. I learned poleaxe and all the medieval weapons, and just total state of joy. When COVID hit, things changed for me a little bit. I gained a bunch of weight, and my flexibility just went down. I wasn't able to go to the park the way I used to. And I'm now, with this sword class that I'm doing, I'm starting to get the flexibility back, starting to lose some of the weight that I gained during COVID, and I'm starting to feel a little more myself again.
I'll give you the wrestling diet. Eat baby food for 2 weeks. You'll lose the weight. Nothing but baby food for every meal.
That sounds horrible.
It'll shed.
I did the keto diet, and the first 3 weeks I was losing 5 pounds a week. It was great. And I was like, oh, by my birthday, man, I'm going to be in shape again. I'm going to be feeling great. But then I plateaued. And
your body, it's the muscles. You got to trick them, you know?
I guess it's that baby food, huh? Right. That's what you do.
Yeah. Actually, I did this thing called Reboot with Joe, and I lost like 30 pounds. And then when I stopped, it came back. And then there's a, what they coined as blood doping, which I was doing, and I didn't even know I was doing it. But for years, I was donating my white blood cells, and apparently, when you do that, it speeds up, your red blood cells, and actually, you burn a lot of calories and weight to get those white blood cells back. And that's exactly what Lance Armstrong was doing, but I had no idea. And that's.
There's a connection there. I'm making the connection of my wife. After we had the baby, she never put on weight when she was pregnant, except obviously the baby. Right. But then afterwards, because she was breastfeeding, her body was just burning calories to make the milk. It's sort of a similar concept of you're getting rid of your blood cells. Your body needs to use everything to make it. That's sort of a similar thing.
Yeah, interesting. So I was doing that and not even realizing, this is why I can keep my shape. When I stopped donating, I started gaining weight like crazy. Yeah. There's a lot of tricks. You learn a lot of tricks.
I'm just staying fat, I guess. That's right.
Donate some blood.
No, I'm good. Listen, I haven't told Spyda, but everyone who knows me and watches the shows knows I have health issues, and I was always on strange diets and things, and what I've come down to is it's a mindset. It's not about dieting. It's about making choices, if you will, and one of them, the biggest thing, is a mental choice, saying, and this is what worked for me, saying, I want to be healthy. That's it. And that's why I exercise. That's what I tell myself every day. It's why I look at different things. If I had to choose a diet I'm on, it would probably be more Mediterranean. I eat very clean. I basically make everything from scratch. I don't eat rarely anything processed. And when I do, I feel like crap afterwards because my body's not used to it anymore.
I'm similar. I've got IBS. And I've had it since I was 17. It came across because I took a drug called Accutane. I gave it to kids when I was a teenager for acne. And suddenly I went through all this just sudden, awful IBS. And after college, when I got my first apartment, I was watching TV, and one of those lawyer commercials came up. It was like, you have IBS, and were you ever given the drug Accutane? I was like, yeah.
That's me.
Right. And I called my mom. I was like, Mom, what doctor did I go to? How can I prove I took Accutane? And she's like, I don't know. We're living in another place. I don't know what the doctor's name was. So I never got part of the lawsuit. But I got awful IBS, and so I watch what I eat. But I go through some issues. You never see me in the morning, so I don't show up early for anything. I wait till I'm finished. And
losing weight is mental. It's just like, they say like sports is like 90%, mental. It's true. I mean, years ago I was drinking tap water, and just meditating 45 minutes a day, just silently, you know, and lost 50 pounds that way after a year. And tap water is probably the worst thing you could drink. New York City, Bronx tap water.
It's the best tasting, they say.
And just sitting and just concentrating on your breath. So, and, you know, I've been starting to get into meditation again, but I'm not as disciplined, you know, like, but I still do it. Like if I'm driving or something like that, but you can do it. It is mind over matter. It really is. You know, if you put your focus on doing that and accomplishing that, your body will figure out a way to do it, you know, whether it's eating or breathing or, you know.
No, I believe that. One of the things they did for my IBS is they sent me to a hypnotist who did self-hypnosis, not the look into my eyes and suddenly I'm walking around like a duck kind. This is the self-hypnosis where you meditate, you give yourself commands. And that helped a lot because part of what I go through is I know my stomach can get upset at any moment. So I can make my stomach upset by worrying about it.
Yeah,
so
anxiety for sure.
On a train with nowhere to go, and I'll start getting nervous. I'll start sinking, and I'll start upsetting my own stomach. So I'm careful about how I travel.
I get it.
But yeah, no, I think that you're right. Meditation is huge.
I used to do a lot of that. I've started that up a little bit myself again too. I used to love it. But you know, I think we're hitting that hour and a half mark. I'm not gonna keep you any longer. I'd like to, you know, do a little wrap up. I'll be honest. I'm gonna stay up and probably watch TV and draw. But
these boxes behind me are off of the show. I'm still packing up statues and stuff. I'm envying people who just got to bring a box of comics and a sketchbook with them, an artist alley. I've got shelves and to build and all sorts of things.
I'm actually going through some paper right now. I have all these things I do as like morning warm-ups or whatever on regular paper. I'll just doodle at night. And what I've decided is everything I have in pencil is going to be $10. Anything that's inked is $15, and anything that's colored is $20. Just to make it easy. Like I found this, I did in 15. It's a little Ninja Turtle cartoon.
Nice.
I did. You know, so I'm like, something like this is going to be $15 at the show. You know, if I was doing something like New York Comic Con, I'd charge a lot more. But, you know, $15 at the show. I have a bunch of things like this and pencil.
That's great because it's gonna. To me, it seems like it's gonna be a very family-friendly show.
I that's what I like. Those are the type. All my work is family-friendly, kid-friendly. My rule when I create my comics or my artwork is basically if you wouldn't see it in Star Wars or like Batman the animated series, it's not going to make it in my book. You know, it's kind of that's my level of storytelling. You know,
for me, it's a little tougher. Most of mine are people stabbing demons and things.
Oh, I love that stuff. That's the stuff I buy. It's not stuff I draw.
It's like the resin model kits. So I'll be spending all day explaining to people why they cost so much because they don't know what they are. And I got to paint this myself. Yeah, here's a painted one though. It's always interesting when it's not a model show for me.
That Batman one that you did based on your dad's work, was that a 1/12 or a 1/6 scale?
Oh gosh, he's about the size of a Spawn figure, but reposed. So that I think,
that's what closer to 1/12 there.
You know, can I just one more thing about your dad, because Ray, you just made me think when you just asked your question. Wasn't your good friend and business partner Tom Neal's assistant for a while?
Yeah, he was. Actually, Tom Siaka worked with your dad when they were doing the Muhammad Ali Superman book, and he actually is on the cover. He's one of the people on the cover.
Yes, actually, he mentioned that in a message.
Yeah.
He also mentioned his father is in the business.
Yeah, he was your dad's intern. You know, he was Stan Lee's intern, your dad's, and also Rich Buckler's.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems like a really nice guy.
He's funny. He's got a lot of stories.
Yeah.
You'll like him. You'll like him a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna like him a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should wrap up. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah.
And I thank you for coming on. I thoroughly enjoyed
My pleasure, guys.
You know,
Thanks
chatting with you. So yeah, just reminding everybody, this Saturday, May 4th, between 12 and 6 in Croton-on-the-Hudson at 3rd University. Do you know the address off the top of your head?
You know, I can pull it up real easy.
Yeah.
You can say, Google it.
Yeah.
Google it.
Well, you can come from anywhere. Stop at the train station and
it's called
take the shuttle around.
It's 35 North Riverside Drive.
35 North Riverside Drive.
And the show goes from noon to 6 o'clock, but the bus runs till 10, so you can enjoy the restaurants in town. Mm-hmm. I recommend 140 Grand if you like smoked stuff. They have won contests with their brisket chili.
That sounds
fantastic. But we got some really great places, and I'm a picky eater. I grew up in Manhattan with the best food, and I was telling Mike earlier that my wife was lived further upstate, and whenever we go to restaurants there, I'm like, this is not food. But Croton has great food. They got a Blue Pig as an ice cream parlor that they make their own ice cream there.
Right.
Lots of great stuff. Just there'll be maps everywhere. You can see where the restaurants are, and the restaurants are going to have specials going on. There's happy hours here, and I think there's a Mexican place got 2 tacos and a margarita for $20. So it's going to be fun. The whole thing is going to be fun.
Are you the oldest son?
No, I'm the middle one.
Oh,
the neglected middle guy.
It's funny. I had a funny story about your dad and your mom. The one time your dad, I was inviting him to the Bronx Heroes Comic Con, like back in 2010. He's like, "Oh, I'm from the Bronx. I lived on 190th Street." And then a few years later, he didn't come to the show. A few years later, I was inviting him again. And then, this woman, I didn't know it was your mom. Yeah. I was like, "Oh," she's like, "He's not going to come. It's from the Bronx. It's in the Bronx. The show's in the Bronx. He's not going to go there." I was like, "Why not?" He told me he used to live there. He says, "No, he didn't. He lives in Manhattan. I should know. I'm his wife." So,
no, completely wrong. You were talking to Marilyn. That's Dad's second wife. My mom's Corey Adams, and he was living on 210th Street in the Bronx.
Yeah.
When I was born, and my older sister Chris grew up there.
You lived in the Bronx too, or no? When you were a baby?
Only until I was 5.
Until you was 5. Okay.
Yeah. Then my parents separated. My dad lived in Manhattan. My mom lived first in Connecticut for a little bit, and then she moved to Long Island. So we were back.
So you're a Bronx boy.
and a Brooklyn, because my first apartment in the past 25 years after, it was all in Brooklyn. Dad swore he would never go back to Brooklyn because he grew up in Brooklyn on Coney Island. He's got a lot of Coney Island stories. But it was a challenge for him. There were gangs and stuff that he avoided. He worked on the carousel in Coney Island to support his family until he got his first work with Archie. But once he left Brooklyn, he never wanted to go back. Yeah. So he was like, "We're living in Brooklyn now? I took my family out of whatever." But I don't know, Brooklyn. I like Brooklyn. But Croton, we moved to Croton because
the Brooklyn today is not the Brooklyn of yesterday. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's places you can go to today that you couldn't go to back then.
No, I remember reading Dee Snider's book. He's the guy from Twisted Sister, and he was talking about having to go into Manhattan for the first time from Long Island, I think it was, and he was scared to death, and he had to go to 26th Street. To this recording studio and whatever, and he was terrified of everything. And I was reading the book, and I did the math, and I was like, I was 10 years old at that time, and my father was sending me out for coffee every day. And Dee Snider, who's like 10 feet tall, is terrified to go to a recording studio a block away from where I lived. That's we lived on 27th Street. Wow. But yeah, the same with Brooklyn. I remember the old subways where everything was spray painted, and it was really wild. And then obviously the things changing. And even when I moved to Brooklyn, the area I was in improved and improved and improved over the years, in the 25 years that I lived there. But and then I've seen it during COVID decrease. I've seen the crime go up and stuff. My younger sister still lives in Brooklyn, and I hear stories about the subways, aside from watching the news. But we moved to Croton because we were priced out of Brooklyn once we had the baby. By the time Sebastian was a year and a half old, excuse me, clearly he needed a room. We looked for 2-bedroom apartments, just too expensive. And so we looked for a place that had really good schools and an artistic community. It's very artsy here.
Yeah, I was going to say, Croton's a very nice town. Like I said, I spent a lot of my college time in that area.
It's beautiful. And so I'm very fond of this place.
That's great.
I'm hoping the convention does well.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It sounds like it, especially since you got the shuttle that'll be able to move people around and stuff. But yeah, let's wrap this up. We could talk off the air for a few. You guys, again, everybody who watched, thank you for tuning in. Everybody's going to watch in the future, thank you for watching. Then, if you're watching this before May 4th, 2024. Please make it up to Croton between 12 and 6 for the Croton Comic-Con. Again, 35 North, what was it? North Riverside.
North Riverside Avenue.
The Avenue. All right, at Third Universe.
Or just get off at the Croton on Hudson. Or actually, the stop is called Croton Harmon because Croton crosses Harmon. So Croton Harmon, stop on either Amtrak or the MTA. There will be a shuttle bus traveling every half hour until 10 o'clock, from noon to 10 o'clock at night.
Sounds great. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. And we will, I'll see you next week with another guest. All right. Bye,
Thanks
guys.
for having me on. That was fun.
Anytime, Ray. You know that. Always welcome.
Get to censor the hell